Hey guys, welcome back to the JP Podcast, episode 15. Today we have Doug Thompson on. We were talking about his Ironmans before here, so we'll hopefully jump into some of those stories. But 20 years with Microsoft, AI ambassador, co-authored a book called Rattled Awake. Rattled Awake, about life-changing moments, TEDx speaker. I saw the video that you did with the story Inner Bully. We'll talk about that. Storytelling, very curious about that because it's something recently that I've been more aware of. What else can I say? Now you're speaking over 100 plus talks that you've done in your career through corporate, independent, and runs 2 podcasts, Tanium Podcast, which is more tech-based?
Yeah, and it's corporate. It's for the Tanium fans and stuff that we have.
Okay, and then thedougthompson.com.
The Doug Thompson Podcast.
Podcast.
Very creative. I have no creative genes in myself. I can remember that.
Okay, so welcome to the show. We're going to dive into a bunch of different topics today. Thank you for being on.
Sure. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. So for somebody that's watching the show, coming from corporate and saying, hey, I spent 20 years at Microsoft. What was that transition point for you from Microsoft to now speaking, writing books, doing your own thing, running podcasts? What was the reason for that, and what's that look like for you?
Yeah, it was a journey. And a lot of times, because I enjoyed what I was doing all along those 20 years. I loved going out and explaining technology to a finance officer or a marketing or somebody that doesn't necessarily, they don't really care about the technology. They just got problems they need to get solved. And along the way, I discovered that if I could tell stories that related to them, that they could relate to, they were much more likely to understand what I'm trying to do and the value of it. It was stickier. And I found this out. We were doing an interview at Microsoft for a position similar to mine. We'd open it up on the team, and we'd gone through 7 or 8 people, and they were very technically smart. But my manager point said, look, they can't tell a story like you do. And at that time, because I'm so close to it, I just sort of developed that over time because I like story, I like to read, I like movies. And I was unconscious that I was able to do something different. We all sort of think that, well, everybody can do what I do. There's nothing unique. And at that point in time, it dawned on me that it was. And then I sort of started, teasing the idea, well, there's a lot of people coming up behind me because I've watched a lot of, been to technical shows, trading, and you're in the back of the room and you're falling asleep, or they're nerds talking to each other. It's almost like if you watch Big Bang, it's like if you had a bunch of room full of Sheldons talking to each other, you go, wait a minute, I'm the Leonard in the room a little bit, if you will. And I said, there's got to be a better way, because they're not reaching their full potential because they can't communicate with a broader spectrum of audience. They can talk to people that are like them.
Correct.
But how do I then how do I show my impact to people outside of that? Because not everybody's in that room. And I said, I wanted to go ahead and when I took on a lot of mentees during that time, and that was part of my goal, was to, hey, look, let's talk about this. Let's do better. There's better ways to accomplish this. And I started teaching them the parts of storytelling, the things that worked for me. And they got better, and then I'd watch them go do things that I couldn't. It was just amazing to watch the change. Much like when I was a mentor in team and training, watching somebody that couldn't swim a length of the pool to finish in a half Ironman triathlon. It's a journey, and you get to watch them grow. So that sparked me. I was at the point of my time. I'm not 20 years old anymore. Now it's time for me to give back. If you look at the stages of your life, I'm sort of in that part where I want to really give back and help other people. And that's, that was sort of the spur that going. And it was a journey. Let's open a podcast. That was during the COVID type thing. Let's start talking about that. Let's explore TED. I want to do a TED talk. All good speakers have a TED talk or something in their background. So I said, let's go do that. Much like an Ironman, I want to do an Ironman. And as I get towards the end of the corporate career, I'm not there yet. But when I get there, I want to be able to sort of have this business and be able to go out and do some talks on my own, because I still have a lot to give. I want to look back, and if you're Harry Potter, my kids, my daughter who's 30 something, but they all like Harry Potter. And I got to where I watched Harry Potter. And there was a bad guy in there, Voldemort. Anyway, he was a bad guy, and he created these things called a Horcrux, which was basically he put a little bit of his soul into some object or something so that he could live forever. I sort of take that spin this way of, I want to put a little bit of my soul and teach you, put a little bit of your soul into other people. So in effect, you're living forever through them.
Makes
right?
sense.
You're creating a lasting impact on it, because we've all had people in our lives that made an impact on us that we sort of every day or what made you want to go into the business you're in, right? There was something along the way that said, hey, I want to do this. And that's what I want to inspire other people, because they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know how to ask. So I can speak their language, so I wanted to go out and try to help them. So
Got it. So I think that's powerful, because there's times where I've realized that, hey, I'm good at this, but I don't think that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's
do it every day.
It's not something that you necessarily had to struggle for.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that it's not difficult, you didn't do work there, but it's a specific skill, and it's easy for other people to see it, but not necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
yourself. So you interested in movies, interested in learning, you have this personality, you're technical, but you're able also to combine, stories. And did you develop the ability to tell stories because you were stuck when you were having conversations with people, or how did you develop that storytelling ability in the beginning phase? And then I'll have a second question towards the end.
I think some of it was innate in that I liked stories.
Okay.
And I was in touch with the ability to tell stories and how it connected with people. But as I got more, to your point, you get to a sales price, and you go, why did we learn this? But they didn't really get the value, or they didn't need these other things. And so then as I started trying, I like trying things, try different approaches to go do things. And then I found that, hey, this is working a lot more.
Okay.
And so I just sort of developed, and it wasn't that quite conscious where a light switch flipped. But we all sort of go, hey, this worked this last time. Let me try it this time and sort of develop it. And then I watched some other people that were very gifted at telling stories and said, hey, look, I want to incorporate some of this, some of that. It just one of those things you get a passion for it, you get connected to it, and you build upon it.
Got it. So now you got people that are coming up behind you. They're able to talk the technical part, because there are some people that sell, this is what the product is, this is what the product does. And it's technical. It's all logical. There's no emotion involved. So you're now mentoring other people at this company saying, hey, I need to help these guys be able to speak through stories, understand the emotional part of it. Did you have some kind of structure on how you taught them to use stories? Was it more of you sharing, hey, here's the story I use, here's when I use it? Is it, hey, here's the psychology of storytelling? Mm-hmm. How did you transfer that skill set to them?
That's something formalizing what that is something I'm working on right now.
Okay, got
it.
it.
I'm working on a book here, and I'm working on formalizing that, so I have a structure with it.
Okay.
But I knew there were certain pillars of which I could tell you which worked.
Okay.
Right. But it's also somewhat individual, because the worst experience I ever had before I went to Microsoft. This was around the Windows 2000 timeframe, and I was a contract trainer. I'd been doing training on like some of the Microsoft products for a vendor, and they said, "Hey, look, Microsoft's looking for trainers to go do this roadshow." And what a roadshow is, basically, think about it is at that time, the System Builder channel, which was every mom and pop shop where hey, there's a computer store in every corner. They built things together. It was well before the world of only Dell, HP, these others that exist today. But they were fanatic. And all they really wanted was somebody from Microsoft to come out and show like they cared for them. So the guy that was running this workshop, he was a Broadway actor. Now, to me, this was just totally blew my mind, because usually if you have the artistic mindset, they don't usually understand the technical mindset of what goes on. It's very,
correct.
It's
I've
sort
seen
of
that.
binary.
Yeah.
And he got both. And he was able to go back and connect with those audiences at a level. I mean, they were just fans. They wanted his autograph. They wanted to do these other things. And it was because he represented Microsoft at the time. It was a touch from a corporate time who they've been doing business with.
Mm.
So it's that connection. And we went in, and there's 10 other people in there like me sort of learning. It's a week-long workshop, and they're going to pick the trainers for the events that are coming up afterwards. And in here had this guy, I'll call him the professor. He had the tweed jacket and the elbow patches, very, very dignified when he was, and I really liked that style. And I tried to emulate that style all week, and I was failing miserably. You might be able to tell the way I'm hitting microphones and stuff around here. That just didn't work for me. But I was trying, and I get to the last night before we're supposed to have our big performance to audition, if you will. And I'm talking to my wife, so I don't belong here. So here's two things working. One, the inner mind said, you don't belong here, you stink. Because I've been failing all week. So my inner bully had been telling me stories. And my wife said, well, what's been going on? You're naturally good at this. And I said, well, I've been doing it. She said, that's not you. You can't become somebody in 4 days, even if you could. That's not you. You've got to go back and be the best you that you can be.
Yeah.
So I went back out the next day. There's, it's just energy's flying everywhere. I was in my natural space, knocked the computer off the desk. I mean, it was, it was chaos going on. And at the end of it, I thought I did well. I got a call back from the guy. He says, I'd waited for that guy to show up all week. Because just from the introduction and stuff, he sort of was good at picking out people. And he says, you were the best one there. That last day, you were the best one there. So I ended up doing half of the road shows that went on, and I got sort of a feel for how you go tell a story, relate to the audience, do some things like that. And I've sort of built upon that my whole career.
Okay.
So, but that, again, I could not be the professor. I can appreciate the style of it, but that's not me.
You have to be your authentic self.
And that's why when I'm mentoring somebody, I've got a different skill set that I'm working with, and some of them have been more reserved and more professional, more like that, and I try to coach them in that method. So there are some structure and I break it down to 8 steps, I sort of call it, to create a story. One of it is you got to meet the hero. So in the stories we tell from a technology perspective, the customer is the hero. You got to make them the heroes, not the product. That's wrong. If you're making the product the hero,
that's powerful.
I guess when too many, that's where too many people that really love what they do, telling a story, they start wrong. They start with our product's the best to go do.
That's really powerful,
right? So they come to you with problems and pain and these other things, and that's my job, is synthesize that.
Okay.
Knowing what our product can do, how can I tell a story that relates to solving that? And do we have a use case? Has somebody else done the same thing?
Stay on that part in terms of, if you can, please, making the customer the hero. Can you expand on that, what that means?
Yeah.
Maybe you were.
Well, one, it does the emotional connection. So we evaluate things on logic, but the buying decision is almost always done emotionally.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So how do you attach that emotion? People can't be emotionally attached to numbers unless you're an accountant. Right. So how do you get them where the numbers don't necessarily matter? Right. It's what the product can do to solve your pain, your problem, whatever you have.
Okay.
And it's understanding. So part, I've had to study, finance people care about these things. Right. Marketing managers care about these things. And so I have sort of this persona in my mind of sort of the general area of what the product can do for those things. Then I add, and I call this part of special sauces, I'll do LinkedIn stalking, or I'll do some other stuff to find out what do they like, what do they know about, or maybe it's something about the company.
So you're taking the extra time to go look at who they are, their interests. Okay.
Again, trying to personalize, because and this is a second step, is start the story where the customer is. So that's where I begin the story. It's not once upon a time somewhere. It's, hey, you're sitting at this desk and you got this problem today. So they're more willing to come along for the storytelling ride if you meet them where they are, rather than asking them to come where I'm at.
Do you already know their problem, or you're asking questions to identify their problem?
Yeah, sometimes I have a general idea. Each industry, it's been in technology long enough to sort of get a general idea of what this is, but there are other questions, and that's part of the things that you're having to build the story on the fly to either confirm or make tweaks to what the story you want to tell them is. But yeah, it's all about, again, asking those questions.
Okay.
Because that helps you build a better story, and also helps me uncover additional pain that they hadn't initially mentioned.
Okay, so the customer's the hero. Meet them where their story is. Okay. What else? You said there was 8 different steps.
So then you've got the typical story arc, right? You got to go through. Hey, here's what they had. Things change. What's the change moment that changed every day? And what here's the struggle I've got to go through, right? And then depending on how long the meeting is, you can't do a whole lot in a half hour. But you want to sort of take them on this journey of where here's the tension, and then you got to relieve the tension, and that gives them a chance to sort of absorb what's going on. Because if you watch a movie, unless it's a Michael Bay movie, it's not foot to the floor the whole time, right?
Okay.
Because you need to have these ebbs and flows that go on. That's where reading books and watching movies help me sort of understand a flow of a story. So you're taking them through their day. They've explained what their day is, and in the story using, well, you mentioned have all these other things, and this probably caused you to work late nights or do these other things, that you didn't really, I really didn't like that. Okay. But then, so as you come on, you build this and you were able to accomplish it eventually or not. And you go on, what's the next one? So you're taking on this journey. 2 or 3 is usually enough to do that. There's no hard and fast rule. Again, it depends on how time it is. And then you show them at the end of the day, it's like, well, I had a customer just like you. And a lot of the times I'm making it's a composite of a customer, because we have customers at various different phases of their life cycle and maturity. And, there may not be one I've been the whole lifetime with, depending on the time struggle, but I've been seeing enough that I can put this composite character together to sort of say, hey, here's what happened. I got a customer that did this, blah, blah, blah. And hopefully you've got some that you can prove to a case study. But if not, there's been enough anecdotal evidence and you've seen enough evidence to say this is true. This path is true. You could accomplish this. And you're telling the story about this other company that did this to them. They can picture themselves being that other person, right? And I mentioned when I talked about triathlons early on, I'm, Julie Moss crawling across the finish line. I can see myself, if I had to do that, I could do that. And this is just simply brain science. So I did some brain science thing before I did my TED Talk on how the brain works and tells stories and the other things. And the more interesting the story, the more the struggle you have, the more we remember it.
The more struggle you have, the more you remember it.
Because you're pulling in more pieces of the brain, right? And the more latches you have in the brain, the more emotional context you have in the other thing, it's more memorable than, this thing was $100 more than the other.
Correct.
Right? So you have that connection. So going out, you do the struggle, they're the hero, and then you have, okay, here's what's next. Okay, this is sort of the end of chapter 1, here's chapter 2. Let's do a POC, let's go prove this, let's go show these other things. Now, along those lines, there's the number 8 thing, which is the special sauce. And again, this is where it's very individual. Again, in mine, my stories are going to have humor. They're typically going to be about sports or something like that, or kids or grandkids. But it's my flavor, it's my unique touch that helps make the story mine. One, it makes it easier for me to tell. Again, I don't have to try to be the professor. And 2, it is uniquely you. And it has to sort of match what your vibe is for them to believe it, because they can see as a good speaker, you can tell when somebody's not really showing, somebody's being genuine. Right? You go look at Tony Robbins. I mean, he's very passionate about that thing.
Correct.
And it comes across. You can't help but know. I mean, his voice gives me, and so that's the special sauce. And there's a few things that you could carve out to do that, but the same model sort of works regardless of how long you're in there. You just have sort of a dust and maybe skip a step, and maybe it's one struggle today and we'll talk about these other things tomorrow. But you're trying to make that connection that you understand what their pain is, their problem, and you've got a way that can help them. Right? But they're going to do the work to go do this. I'm not going to magically fix it.
Correct.
I'm going to give you the tools that you can then go magically fix it. Then how does that make you look upstream? A lot of times I'm helping them manage up as well, because I've got to give them the story that they go tell the CFO or whoever.
Got it.
Right? So at the end of the day, when you go talk to CFO, at the end of the day, you're saving money because you've got more manpower to go directed at what you need. You don't have to hire extra headcount to go do something.
Got it. I think that there's some. I'm a very logical, structured person. So as I'm learning in terms of understanding what are the steps, so I think there's some people that they're more charismatic, right? Depending on that profile, DIS profile, whatever assessment it is, and having the steps of how to tell a good story or the breakdown, as well as for different personalities. So I don't know what the book that, when that book comes out, would love to read it. But the different personality types and how storytelling for them will be different based on their personality.
That's good input. I like it. So I'll dedicate that chapter to you.
Oh, okay.
Because I haven't actually thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think different personality types tell stories different. It's kind of what you just said. We have one of our guys, Fred Terrace, who comes from Broadway as well. Now he does insurance and investments.
Yeah.
But his people skills and his ability to connect and the way he speaks from stage, those two, bringing that technical and that, personal touch is unique. So you get on a TEDx. How did you get to TEDx, first of all, and why? Did you want to be on it? Were you seeking it out?
Yeah, again, wanting to be a speaker, having a TEDx that you could point to sort of shows, well, okay, well, at least I can get on stage and not fall off, right? So at least I've met the bare minimum. So I put it as something I wanted to do. And I put my sales mindset onto it. Okay, so look, okay, I can apply to these big ones. And I applied to some big ones and got turned down, and I don't like rejection. So I got to the point where, let me get a smaller one. Let me get some, and local, so I don't have to fly. And, there's like, so Blinn College, College Station, was holding their first, it was a first TEDx thing, and it's too late to get the speakers for this one, but I said, look, I'm going to go to this. I'm going to go check it out. First time you look at them, I could. You're sort of gauging yourself against the other speakers. Could I do this? But the other ones, I got to meet the people that were organizing it. Again, sort of, hey, great thing. I want to be, included in the next one. Can you keep me posted? And I stayed in touch with, again, this is the sales 101. I stayed in touch with them over time. Hey, what are you thinking? I saw this other thing here to go do this, trying to add value to them. And then lo and behold, when it came time, they sort of, hey, look, we're going to open up the call for speakers next week. They sent me, here's what it's going to look like. And I said, okay, here's a typo on this page. So I sent that back to them before they published it. Just luckily I caught it. Because I would have normally blown over it. But they said, okay, kind of fine. Here, you got to do this demo video and stuff. And okay, now I've got a chance to go accomplish this TED Talk, this TEDx. And I'm like, okay, great. How do I stand out with all these auditions and stuff? But picking a smaller audience, I knew that my chances were probably better to get in this because it would sort of go under the radar of of some of the top people. And I'd met the people. Again, they're going to be sort of looking. I was meeting them where they were and telling a story. I've been working with them. I was a known commodity. You're more likely to talk to somebody that you know or seen than you are. And so then I had to go do this, and I actually did it from a technical conference. I did it from a hotel room. I had to do here you got to do your speech. You got to do your talk. It doesn't have to be all in one flow. We know you're going to polish it and do some other things because it's like 3 or 4 months out. But that's how they're going to make their decision. And so I do it, and I film it, and it needs to be about 12 minutes. My original script was 30 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay. We're going to have to trim this down a little bit. Because I like to add color and, backstory. And Ted, you got 12 minutes to get your point across. So the experience did teach me some brevity is sometimes very good in telling a story. So I'd go, and it's like you're cutting out part of your children. You're throwing, I really like this part, right? And so I got that down. I got it down to like 12 minutes. And they chose me. And so now it's the week, like they didn't have the exact date when they were going to have it. So my family and I scheduled a week-long trip down in Grand Cayman. Well, the TEDx was the day after we got back. So I'm like, oh, well, I can't cancel on this. So I'm out on the beach in the morning practicing my talk, doing these other things. Because we had to do it. So we had the dress rehearsal, then you had the performance. So the dress rehearsal, we're on there. They're going to film both, and they're going to do some magic of slicing the best of both of them together. And they did that in mine. I'll be perfectly honest. There was a couple slices in there. But I've never done the same thing twice in my entire life, especially now, the theme of it may be the same, but the delivery is never the same because a lot of it depends on the audience I'm talking to. As I said, where's my audience? What's the topic of the day? You got to sort of make that connection with your audience so that they'll buy in and listen because there's too many other distractions they can have, be it phone, be it something else that goes on. And so, but I got through it. I had to stand in a 6-foot circle, the red circle. I'm a prowler. I have to prowl the stage to get out, and I've been known to be in the back of the audience at sometimes because I like to do that connection. And so that made me sort of feel unnatural and a little pent up. I was like, okay, there's energy here I can't get out. And excuse me, as I'm going through it, I'm not having fun. And the playback, the story that I'm telling, is not the way I've played it back in my head 10,000 times. So when I finished it, I got off stage. I wasn't happy with what the performance was. I said, I did not meet what I envisioned in my head. And so I was a bit down on myself. Go see my wife and daughter who were in there, and it says, and they say, look, you've done better, but you did a really good job. And
that's not what you want to hear.
That's not what I want to hear. But a young man came up to me afterwards, and he had this notebook, and he only had 3 slides, and he had sort of drawn some things on the slide, and he written some notes. He said, I got a couple questions to follow up with you. And I spent a good 5 minutes with him and stuff on that. We answered a question. She said, "Thank you. They're very impactful." And then it sort of changed my perspective on it. That's my goal, is if I can impact one person's life to think and do something differently, then I've accomplished something. Because that's one person that may have never heard that story that impacted with him. And that's why when I talk to people that say, "Well, I've got nothing to share. It's nothing unique. Got these other things," that you do. Because there's somebody out there in the vast world of people that you've told, and I had somebody on LinkedIn reach out to me and say, "Look, I've seen things like this, but for some reason I had your video in my feed today, and it changed. Now she's doing dog rescues and these other things, and she's blown up. She's done some other things because she saw my video that I posted that day that I didn't think was that remarkable." So again, getting out and telling your story, and doing that. But that was a TED. I was miserable. I didn't like it. I may go do another one. I'd do it differently, but I was like, this is unnatural. This is one thing. Be careful what you ask for. You may get it.
Yeah. But that's great though, because it is a lot of times when you're doing things the first time, it's unnatural, right? We talk about everything in our business is awkward, then mechanical, then natural,
right?
So did you have the topic already on what you wanted to cover on TEDx? Or was it like, hey, I want to tell the power of stories, or did you just want to get out there and you figured it out along the way?
I had a story I wanted to tell, but it was different than the story I told.
Okay, got it.
I liked Paul Harvey back in the day. Told this thing every day during the week. It was like the rest of the story, and it was basically a story told in reverse. Now Mike Rowe sort of revived that with the way I heard it and doing that. Mike Rowe's a fantastic storyteller. But what you do is you learn a little bit of background about the person. At the end of it, you find out who that person is. So the whole thing is you're trying to listen to the story and
got it.
Gather. And so I like that story. I like that. I said, let me work on storytelling because it is very impactful. And I did the brain science and I did these other things. But when I really spun it around, and you can sort of see this if you watch the TEDx, you can sort of see when the transition takes place where I'm much more comfortable in what's going on after I get through the science and stuff. And it is the actual personal type thing of where the inner bully's talking to me.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because the whole time that now you've got this, you stink. You should not be on stage to be able to this starts working against me. And I'm like, just be quiet, and I'm like, you start believing it. And I'm like, I don't, you get this imposter syndrome, this doubt that's going on in your head. And I was like, God, no, I'm going to write this story. I'm going to change it to write about this inner story. Because no matter how well I tell an outer story, if that inner story is out of whack,
it's powerful.
It's not going to work. So as I start saying, how do I fight this inner bully? How do I fight this subconscious thing that is working? It's doing this job, is trying to protect me from, it developed early on when we were running from dinosaurs. There's a lack of dinosaurs out. I don't know if you noticed that lately, but so now we invent things to be, to cause us, well, we can't do that. You can't do an Ironman because you're old and fat. Well, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. So I wrote it about that because that was my struggle during the time. I sort of pivoted to go do that during that. But I did weave into storytelling because it is all storytelling. We're naturally wired to learn from stories and to tell stories. But the phone with the texting and school, when I went to school, we had to talk to people. You had one phone in the house, you had to pick it up, and hopefully you had a long cord where you can go around the corner and nobody heard you.
Yeah.
But now phones are mainly text or instant messaging or something, or you may do a Snapchat or do something like that, but it's very short form that kids don't develop that skill of being able to work and tell stories. 'Cause that's the way you connected with people.
That's powerful.
And, one thing I want to go back to schools. I think schools should teach this. And I've talked at colleges and stuff before about sort of your career doesn't have a syllabus. That's one of my favorite talks because they've been in this structured environment all their life where they knew how to succeed, right? If I do A, B, and C, I'm getting an A.
Yeah.
Right? But corporate world's not like that. And just there's no cut and fast drive. So how do I then learn to tell my story? Here's the work without sounding like you're bragging, right?
Yeah.
So there's sort of, you have to sort of say, well, what did you do to do this? Well, when I helped, and again, when you're telling it to that, I made the customer the hero to go do that. You sort of fade a little bit into the fabric of the story, and you're not the star of the story. You can do that.
What are some of the mistakes that you see when people tell stories?
That they rely too much. They don't do the emotional attachment. It's very scripted. There's they don't put them in it. Okay, anybody could go read a line, and when you're acting and stuff, you go and you try to find the best person that's a fit for that role, in the way that they portray it. We all portray something in mind, but in the stories that they tell is one, they rely too much on facts and figures. In my space, right? So in these other things, but even the kids, when they're getting out of school, they read me their resume. That's their story. I said, no. I could hire anybody from here and not get fired. Why are you the best person to do that? Well, I was part of this team. What did you do in the team? Well, I helped organize things. What the impact? So you have to sort of lead them along to sort of learn that you can tell what you did here without sounding braggadocious about it. But you at the end of the day, you can share what that impact was, and to them say, okay, I see how you're a big team player with that. Or, but don't rely on the facts and figures, and for God's sake, make it your own. Don't copy somebody else.
What is it that drives you to want to be a speaker?
There's an energy you get back from being on stage. That's my drug. Okay. There's an energy you get back when you're on stage, but also that part, I've impacted that one person, and if I keep impacting that one person, I want that to be my legacy. That, hey, look, I learned this from this old, bald fat guy that used to do triathlons. He taught me this, and it sort of goes down like that. So that's really the reason I do it.
And your talk on stage, you talked about having an inner bully.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can you expand on that? And then when did you become aware of your inner bully? I know he's 7 feet tall, and I forgot his name, but
Simon.
And
he has an English accent, so you may picture who I picture that character after. But it dawned on me during that the TED Talk as I'm preparing for it. That's when I could really articulate what it was. I knew I had it, like when we talked about the triathlons earlier, the voice saying, hey, look, you're old and fat. You did a pretty good job getting this far. You should quit. Right? So I'd experienced it before, but I couldn't put my finger on it. We've all had these things where it's like deja vu. I know this looks familiar, but I can't tell you exactly what it is. And that's what that was. And I'm listening to that, and I'm like, wait, this is my subconscious. This is this bully here doing what it's supposed to do, save us from dinosaurs. But is it serving it? And now I've gotten to where they don't go away. I've never met anybody that's totally 100% said, I don't have that anymore. But you learn how to manage it. You learn when it comes on. My favorite thing to do is ask for receipts.
Expand
prove
on
to
that.
me where I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? Where in the past have I not been able to do this? And after a few, it usually, again, you think you're talking to a dialogue. It's like I was talking to my dogs. I'm having a conversation with my dogs the other day. But I'm negotiating with the subconscious to get it one where it's comfortable with what I'm doing then, and it sort of calms down and goes back into its room. Okay, it's that self-talk, but I turn it into positive, because that's the biggest thing is the humans are wired to be negative, to have this negative mindset.
Why are they wired that way? I feel like I'm wired that way
more than anything else, because if we're worried about negative, then we're going to protect ourselves. Right? There's a bully. There's a dinosaur around the corner. There's something else. So there's danger everywhere. So I think you don't come to that from a positive mindset. There's
Correct.
danger everywhere, right? You have to be able to react.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that stems from, and things I've read to sort of confirm that. But the part of, you have a choice in the morning, and Tara LaFont-Gooch, who's a friend of mine, and I'm working with her, she wrote a book about gratitude. She has a great thing. I am grateful for the opportunities that I've been given. And when I have that gratitude, I start off every day with a little meditation, gratitude type thing, saying, here's what I'm thankful for today. And I'll use an example the other day. The days that I don't do it are worst days for me. I woke up the other morning going to the gym to work out. I just started to go back to lifting weights, and I had a bad dream that sort of put me off on this bad path somewhere. And I said, look, usually I listen to podcasts and stuff during the day. So look, I just need to listen to some music that's going to put me in a better frame of mind. And it totally changed my outlook on the day. So the gratitude, starting with that I'm lucky to be here, a guest with you, to have that. And I want to get my message out, and I want to do that. So coming from that place of gratitude helps keep the inner bully at bay. if you will. So it's I can go do this. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to go do this. Let me see. Because then when you open that up, then you find out I'm going to find ways to go do it. Right. So in the triathlon thing, I found out ways. Look, if I can't miss this day of training, I've got to go out and go do this, or I'm not going to be able to make the starting line.
Yeah.
And so it is a mindset thing that you're constantly sort of battling with.
I think that's powerful what you said, though, in terms of looking for receipts. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was getting started in the business, I would struggle, and I would ask myself questions like, where is it written in the world that I can't be that? Where's it, where is there proof that I can't do that? Because we get stuck in the doubting, and we don't do the other side of that, right?
Yeah, it's easy to do when you see all the stuff coming in, or it's been a bad month, you haven't done that. So I mean, it's easier to sort of fall back into that. But realize we all go through these tough times, and at the end of the day, if we hadn't gone through that struggle, we would not put in the work and stuff to be able to get to that next plateau to go do things. Because I find in the Ironman, when I said I about quit, but I kept going. I got the second wind after I said I got back on and I did that. So that's very much the same thing.
And what advice do you give to people to counteract that inner bully? So one is receipts. Any other advice there?
Again. Start with as positive of attitude as you can be. You're not happy all the time, but say something bad happens. Say, okay, ask for receipts. Was any of this my fault? Sometimes things happen just to happen because we have no control over that. The only way we have control over things is how we respond to a stimulus on the outside.
Correct.
I just say encourage yourself to, before you act, think about what's the best thing that could come out of this because this happened. Not the worst case.
Okay.
What's the best case that could happen? In the book I wrote about my sort of last year challenge I had at work, and I had it's either like, okay, it awoke and I'm not going to steal it so you get the book, but it made me aware that if you call it God or call it whatever you want, higher being, they're talking to us and they present us with opportunities, but because of our mindset and inner bully, sometimes we don't see them. We don't see them for what they are. If we're looking, I'll use the car example, right? So you go out and I'm going to go buy this red Tesla. All of a sudden, everybody's driving a red Tesla. I realize Austin's a bad example for that because everybody's got a Tesla on that. But you start seeing those things that come up. It's not a manifestation as much as it is an awareness of opportunities that are out there. And so when things happen, do a bigger, broader search of it before you react to it. Pause. Don't do that initial thing where I got to panic and go crawl up in a ball and go to bed. I do know that when I do get in that, because I've fallen back in that, when I do get in that pity pool mindset of this happened, starting to think negatively, it's going to take me about 2 weeks to get out of it. But I actually use that as hope. And then I have to process what happened. I have to work through these stages. You have the 7 stages of grief or whatever. I've got to work through those to get to the point where then I can go take an opportunity of that. But I don't lose hope. There's always the finish line is just over there. I just know I have to work a little bit harder to get to it.
Yeah, that internal work takes a little bit of time. I get that part. We talk about in our business condensing how long you're down. Before something go wrong and you're down for a month. You have a bad month, you have a whole bad 6 months, and then you mature to shorten that time frame, right? Where, it's a week. Man, I lost a day. Now it's like I lost an hour. Now it's like, okay, man, take your 5 minutes, 10 minutes. How fast can you get you get back to the right state of mind? Yeah,
exactly. It's that resilience.
Yeah. Again,
which we're not serving our kids well enough anymore because some parents are the helicopter parents. They don't let them fail.
Yeah.
And schools now are sort of geared where they don't necessarily let them fail all the time. Where everybody has to get up. But I learned more from failure. I've learned more from a skint knee or these other things. And the biggest skill was how to get back up.
Yeah.
The resilience that you talk about. Because if you shorten that time, as you said, then it has less impact overall.
And I think it's creating systems for you.
Yeah.
Because success leaves clues.
Right.
So that then you could say, okay, here's my sequence of here's what, how I process this failure. Here's the questions I ask. Here, I think that would be an interesting topic of what is the system for how I process failure. We may want to do a video on that. Because I think having a system for that can create more consistent routines.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Because if you see, again, it gets back to telling the customer story. They're the hero. You're telling your side of that story. I can see that somebody else has done it. I can picture myself in that mind. Would this work for me?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the other part too is also training your mind to what is the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I think we don't do that. I was watching this show one time, and this young lady kept rejecting people, and so the therapist ends up saying, the reason that you do that is because if you reject them first, they can't reject you. And it goes back to, why do we prepare for all the worst things?
Mm-hmm.
Right? In terms of prepared for fear, dinosaur around the corner, because if we could prepare for all the bad things that can happen, then we won't be as hurt when they happen.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, our brain doesn't look for all the great things that happen or the abundance that can happen. And, again, it's that being more aware of opportunities that when you're looking for them,
mm-hmm. And that's where the gratitude and that stuff comes in, as I try to sort of slow down or negate the negative tendencies that we as humans have. Again, looking at all these other things and sort of like, then that opens up that, hey, I can see this. Again, thinking about what's the best that can happen.
Would you say that, because how old are you now, Doug?
What, do we have to tell you?
Oh, okay. So
just say I'm in my mid-60s.
Okay. So, from I'm 38, father, 2 kids, third on the way, running a business.
You're busy.
Yes, we're busy. Everybody's busy. What would you say as you've gone from 30, 40, 50, 60 that's really shifted in you?
Inner awareness of what's inside, right? So I have 2 kids now, and I have 7 grandkids.
Oh, nice.
Being a grandparent's a great role, right? As you probably are aware. Like, here, it's broken. You can take it back. But more aware of the value that I bring to the table. What are my skills? Getting more sure of that, again, because I've been through a lot of these trials and tribulations. I've been through, like I was at Microsoft, we were making gazillion dollars, we're making no money, Apple's killing us, to now, they started to come back where they're one of the big companies again. So how do you get through these evolutions? We all have to change. And it's, how do you adapt to that change? I've changed enough to know that nothing is permanent, which gives me confidence to know that, okay, it may be bad now, it will get better.
That's great. I've changed enough to know it's changed. I've seen change enough to know nothing is permanent.
And it's like, I've done enough triathlons to sort of know that, okay, here's the cycle of stuff that goes on. So it's repetition, I guess, more than anything else. And then not being afraid to not being the smartest person in the room. Some of us, we get that fear where they know more than I do. Rarely, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room or I'm alone. So I'm giving you guys a lot of credit.
I got you.
For that. And it's simply being comfortable with that, but also bringing them value, because there's things I know that I can bring them that they don't know, that they haven't seen before. And not being intimidated by, occasionally you'll get the heckler or somebody that wants to, and then how do you handle that graciously, right? How do you accept that and work through that? Comedians are really good about, because they get that a lot. How do you sort of you got the inner bully, somebody's inner bully on the outside. Now, how do you adapt and handle that? So just knowing yourself enough that you can, I can pivot over here, I can do these other things, and not getting into this confrontation. There's ways around that. I mean, there's sometimes you have to go through things, but I've again been through enough to sort of recognize the signs, which are, okay, here's where I'm at today. What can I see? The best the best performances I had as an engineer back in Microsoft were when the house was on fire. So we were going out to a customer, do something, deployment. All of a sudden they can't get email, they can't get calendar, they can't get these other things. So it's really, their house is on fire. And we sold them the product that is doing that to them. And, okay, we're going to work through this. We will fix the problem. How do you do that? So, getting everybody on the same page, finding out what each group needed, what was going on, what happened. But being that visionary, we can say, look, and I'll use sailing as an example. I don't know if you've ever been sailing.
No.
It's not a straight line. So if I want to get across the lake and the wind is in my face, I'm not going to take a straight line to get there. I have to do what they call tacking. So I'm doing this But I'm always got that on the horizon, or when I'm in an open water swim, there's no lane lines on the bottom of a lake or something. How do I know where the turn is? And the buoy they have is only like about 6 foot tall, but if you got people thrashing you and stuff, you really can't see it. So I'm looking off in the distance at a tree or something else. So again, keeping my perspective, I know where I'm going. We may tack to get there. And that's the best leaders I've had were those people that could sort of articulate that. Hey, we're going through this little struggle here, but we're keeping our eye on where we're going. We'll get through this rough patch and there's smoother waters up ahead. So learning to sort of look further ahead than today.
As you look further ahead with AI, with what you're doing since you were an AI ambassador, what are like the top 3 shifts that you see coming down the road?
Well, there's fear. We're smack dab in the middle of that. AI is going to take my job.
Fear.
In any transition, yes, there's nobody making ice boxes anymore when the refrigerator came along, right? There's certain things that will go away, but there's also kids in school today, they're training for jobs that don't exist yet. That's a daunting task when you think about it. How are you going to train me to do something? You teach them to think. You teach them to be resourceful. Now, AI is a great tool, and I'll use it as an example. Yesterday, we were in a training, and the opening was you have an icebreaker. We're filling out these quizzes and stuff on that. So they asked something about when did we get our 350th customer, and I'm doing a little search here. I'm using AI to search, and I'm searching internally, and I find, here's the document in the syllabus of which. So our team scored 100% because they didn't say we couldn't.
That's funny.
It's good.
Yeah.
But again, because I know how to use those things. I embrace AI for what it is. I don't trust it 100%, but it can make you much more powerful, right? To go do it. So I think not doing it's not an option, right? Saying we're never going to do AI, that's not an option because you'll go out of business pretty soon. Being afraid that it's going to take your job, you need to learn how to use it to do your job better.
Makes sense.
And you can, right? It can be your bet. Like when I'm writing something, I'll say, okay, here's my idea. Give me a first draft. And then usually a few hours later or an hour or so later, I've crafted it. Okay, I like this. Because it's done a lot of the research and some of the business. And now I go back and check facts and figures and stuff on all that, which you should do. Never, again, don't trust it. Trust but verify. But how do you use it to take that stuff that sucks, that's important, but sucks a lot of your time away so that you can spend more time on the things you bring unique value to?
Makes sense.
Okay. And so giving everybody access in an organization to AI so that they can do that, not just a few, because if you give it to a few, they're going to be the star performers, and that's not fair. And what you're doing is you're actually probably not getting the most out of it because there's some people out there that if they had exposure to it would do wonderful things. And I use my example when I was on the board of the Boys and Girls Club up in Georgetown. You would have kids that were from underprivileged backgrounds that didn't have a computer at home or something, but they got on that computer and they were doing some mad stuff. You gave them access to things that then they could go do. So you think about that. That sort of equals a playing field and gives everybody a chance to be creative with what it does. You can't put it back in the bottle. It's not going to go away. So banning it is not going to help. But being aware of what it is and trying to keep an eye on the nefarious things that can happen.
Do you see like 3 potential for younger people that are maybe watching this? You said we're training younger people to do a job that doesn't exist yet. Mm-hmm. Are there future, I have younger kids right now. Mm-hmm. So they're too small, 2 and 6 months.
Yeah.
But here in the near future, what do you see are opportunities outside of just, it's not learning how to, I don't know if it's learning how to code anymore, but now
no, because actually AI can write code better than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right?
So what are like potential industries, careers, opportunities that you see in that for children?
So learning, again, older, because it may change a little bit as it gets better and more intelligent. But right now, you call it prompt engineering or prompt crafting. The value you get out of AI, right, and say ChatGPT. When I talk about AI, I'm talking about ChatGPT at this point in time. The value you get out of it is on how well you ask it questions, the prompting that you give it.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And you get more effective at it. You get more out of it a lot sooner. So that is a skill, because that will actually help you learn. Always be learning. You don't, just never, always be curious about something. But being able to use the technology at your hands to do things, to find out information about it. Hey, could I automate this? Has anybody done it? So again, speed up learning how to interact with that is great. Again, there is some coding and stuff that can be involved when you think about autonomous vehicles and all. How do you do that safely? How do you make that where we really need people that can make that more reliable and more timely? And that can simply be, we need better networks to get data to it. We don't end up with that problem in Austin where they're all in carbon, all on the same street stopped because they can't get it. So how do you do that, right? So think about jobs in that field. And think about jobs in like what I'm doing in technical sales or something where you're sort of the Pied Piper. You can sort of help learn the storytelling, and you can fit anywhere in that. Understand how technology works, but there's still going to be some things in there that are crafty and stuff that technology can't necessarily replace.
Do you see a future where technology does replace jobs and people get a basic income?
I don't know about the basic income, about things like that. I mean, we called it something else back in the day. I do see it replacing some jobs, things that are repetitive, things that they have sort of defined parameters that you can come in. That's already happening.
So like trash guys, as soon as autonomous vehicles get a little bit better, like that role, like there's a lot of
different... It could be the driver, but if you've looked in my neighborhood, ain't nobody put their trash cans in the same place where they're supposed to all the time. So as long as there's a human involved in the other part of
that's
it,
where the robot comes in.
Yeah, I mean, we're not the Jetsons.
Tesla
not
robot.
everything is quite as progressive as that. There's still the human nature in there. But
yeah,
like they're doing autonomous trucks on 130, where they're doing that and they're driving. But as long as there's a human element involved, which is very unpredictable, and I don't have the ability to get real time, I mean, like 2-second old data is making a decision, that's rough. I can't fully do it. So I've still got somebody sitting in the cab doing this. So I'm still paying that person to now hover over the wheel in case the AI goes out. Right? Now, I think in a city or some other places where it's less risky, you have more control. I think you'll see more of that. But in the wide open spaces and stuff, I mean, Ford's got Blue Cruise now where you can sort of leave it off and it does some basic lane assist, but the quality of the roads, stripe may be missing. It's using all that stuff to go do that. There's too many places for error where this costs people's lives.
Yeah.
So I think that's, but there are areas, again, looking at things that are repetitive, that are fairly, if you don't do your job right, nobody dies. Those are areas where I would sort of be wary and look at what my next skill set could be.
Are you moving into more speaking? I know you play a role right now with the technology company. Are you moving more into speaking eventually in the future, or once you retire there?
Once I hang up corporate life, that's what I want to do. That and do workshops where again I've taken sort of the form. It's called Epic Storytelling Method. So I've got that.
So you've created a system.
Yeah, and Epic is emotional. So each letter means something else. But how do you use that framework to sort of look at? And I think that was what you're asking for earlier, to tell a story. Right?
Got it.
I mean, I think adding personality types is a wonderful idea, because that will definitely impact.
Yeah, I can see a lot of companies using your service to come in
doing that, because
train.
You've got technical sales folks out there. You've got these other people that need to learn the storytelling.
Yeah.
That would be the area.
Yeah.
I may do some talks on Iron Man and stuff, Iron Man training for the old fat guy or something. And, who knows? But, again, because I like to give, and I look at it as more of fun time for my wife, because there was a lot of travel and stuff when I was here, but where can I take her to go, do something in Europe, or go do something on the side to go do that. But I like meeting people.
And are you actively pursuing speaking opportunities?
Yes.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. And are you reaching out? Do you have somebody helping you with that, or is it just through?
I'm reaching out. Again, trying to do some stuff through my website. I'm doing some writing and stuff that way. It's just sort of the ball's just, it's a slow mass swim start right now, and I'm just sort of.
Got it.
Hadn't got a process in place, because my day job, I dedicate all the time I have to that, and this is sort of on the side, but I'm spending more time doing that at night and writing things. I wrote something. I did a quick video on a story I wrote the other day, but so yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to get it out there where people see me in action. It makes it easier. It's sort of hard when you're doing a corporate event and it's localized to, hey, I want tickets to go see Doug. He's like, hey. That doesn't usually work very well. So.
Okay. Well, I guess we could wrap up on time's sake, your story of your triathlon. So you did your first triathlon at
some small podunk place in Iowa. Not Iowa, Ohio.
And you were 40.
Well, the first Ironman I did was 47, but that
47.
first triathlon I was like in my 30s.
Okay.
I did it for a few years, retired the first time, came back the second time in my 40s when we moved to Seattle.
Okay.
And went into team and training, and that's where we did an Olympic one. My mentor at the time, he still has the best job title I've ever heard, called Beer Ranger.
Beer Ranger,
which was a route sales guy, and we were at an event. He says, "Hey, we need to do the Ironman," and I said, "Dude, I've done a quarter of that distance. I'm not going to do that." "Oh, here, have another beer."
Yeah.
3 beers later, it sounded like the best idea on the planet. We signed up for it, and 6 months later, I'm out doing an Ironman.
And so the Ironman distances, can you tell me what they are?
Sure, 2.4 mile swim.
Okay.
112 mile bike ride, and then a full marathon, 26.2 miles.
And you start off with the swim, or they change?
You start off with the swim, because if you end it with, a lot of people will drown. so you start off.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it stretches the field out and stuff like that, because it's easier to sort of get. Now, unfortunately, there have been people that drowned in a mass swim start, but it's a lot less than if you got no gas left to go try to do that.
Got it. So your first Ironman,
mm-hmm.
What's going through your mind?
I hated my mentor.
The Beer Ranger?
There was a lot of angst. Going to say, what'd you get me into?
Yeah. Did he do it with you?
Yeah, he did with me.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
okay.
And he finished a little bit before me on that. He didn't pull the thing like your friend did, where he just ran it. He actually beat me. But the environment there is really great. So we went over to Coeur. It was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The first year they had that, I brought my wife over, and you're preparing everything, your carbo loading or whatever for the week before. You get your special need bags together, which you can have one. So you have transition bags, one from swim to bike, one from bike to run. And then you have a special need bags halfway through the bike. So you can basically refill any drinks and stuff you had. Your nutrition's always sort of will it work or not? And you go blank that out in the morning, you get marked. I mean, you're sort of in your head going, okay, I'm got to compartmentalize this. I got to get through one thing at a time. So I said, okay, we're going to get through the swim. And I'd done that distance before. We swam across Lake Washington as part of the thing. So I'd done that distance before. And I have a wetsuit, so I can always roll on my back like an otter and catch my breath. So I wasn't really worried. Swimming never really bothered me, other than the very first race I did. And then the horn the cannon goes off. I mean, they're playing like beautiful. I can still remember they played U2's Beautiful Day. That morning, I can still see it. The sunrise is coming up, so you're getting pumped. They're talking, and you go out and you do the start, and your mind's just simply in okay, what's the next stroke? Where's the buoy? Where's these other things? For me, it's very compartmentalized. You say, okay, look, that clown just climbed over me for the third time. I'm going to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
You're just climb. We used to train in a team in training. We used to do this one exercise where we'd put all the mentees over in the corner of a pool, take the lane lines down, have them swim across, and then we were beating on them with pool noodles and stuff as they had to swim to this other side to sort of simulate the thrashing that went on. So you get through that, get on the bike. So that's pretty simple. The transitions I was usually pretty fast on. You change clothes, get on the bike, go start riding and start eating and drinking, right? Because that's where you get most of your nutrition on that. I'd always heard that at some point in time, life started to suck. I didn't know it started to suck 20 minutes into the bike ride. My bike seat was uncomfortable. My feet were burning, and it got to be 105 degrees during part of the bike ride. I was just miserable, right? But I knew, okay, 1 mile at a time. Let's just keep going. And a little bit of the thing we were talking about earlier, okay, this guy just passed me. I've got to go past somebody else. You're sort of, keeping track numbers of that. You're distracting yourself a lot, but you've got a lot of time in your head. The inner bully's very active during that time, and he's got endurance. He can hang with you a long time. Like, hey, you should just quit. You just go away. So you try to focus yourself on something else. second lap, and my poor wife, she can only see me every other lap, when I come by, and I have to sort of guess when I'm going to come by. I really have no idea. I haven't ridden the course before. And so, I'm worrying about her getting to see me, making sure that, hey, I didn't die, that you can follow people on the tracker.
Yeah.
And I'm climbing up this hill. It's about the 70-mile mark, and I am literally falling asleep because the drinks and stuff that I'd been drinking, I couldn't drink. They just tasted horrible. Get to the top. Thank God for volunteers. Sits me down. Says, hey, how you feeling? I said, I don't feel so good. Hey, that's odd. You don't look so good either. But here, say, have a seat. Gotta love a sense of humor. Gave me a frozen banana. I sat there, contemplated life. Look, again, inner bully. Hey, look, you're an old fat guy. You made it this far. You're fine. Quit. Right? Save yourself. Other side, can you live with quitting? I'd never not finished a triathlon at that point in time before. I'd always finished what I had. Some were sucky, I had flat tires, I had these other things, but I'd always done that. I said, I don't think I can. I don't think I can look back. And it was beyond triathlon. I'd never quit anything I started out to go do. Got back on the bike, rode, found out I got a second wind. Was able to finish that. Then I got to I got off the bike. I was never so happy to think about running 26 miles in my life. But I could not sit on that seat any longer. so I'm like, okay, I got 6.5 hours to finish. And then it became a clock management because you have 17 hours to finish. So I said, I'm going to run to the part where I know I can walk and run to get in. Just so because I saw 2 or 3 people pass out, like down to finish shoot. That close.
Wow.
And they didn't make it. I said, that's not going to be me. I've come too far. And so I got along and I did that. And they had chicken broth at the aid station. You think about it, that's disgusting. Who would think about the best thing ever, because you get sodium that comes in and
makes sense.
It doesn't, and you can stomach it pretty well. I was like 3-fisting it every time I got to an aid station. I thought I was going to OD on chicken broth, but that was the calories I got in, and I managed it. Came in, and you get down to finishing straight, and you're just coming in, and it's like the crowd's just crying, and you come through and you finish it, and you hear that Mike Riley's his name. Says, Doug Thompson, you're an Iron Man. And so I heard that the first time, and I said, wow, I got that. And then I went back, and I couldn't sleep. You're just exhausted. I don't know if you've ever gotten to the part where you're so exhausted you can't even sleep. You figured it'd be really easy. And the next morning, I'm thinking about going up to sign up to do it again next year. I didn't at that point in time, but you think about that. So it was I had that on my, sort of like a TED thing. I said, I did an Ironman. I did something that not a lot of people can do.
That's awesome. I'm sure your kids are like...
Well, they called my bluff on it because I said, look, I'm sort of teasing them. So I'm going to get a tattoo after I get this done. So a few months later, after we finished this, my daughters got together. This is the first time they'd ever gotten together and given me a present in their life. Said, we're going to pay for your tattoo. I said, well, they called me on it. So I had to go. I went down to a tattoo shop and I had to get a tattoo. And that hurt worse than the race.
That's funny.
Was getting in the tattoo. I was like, because I wanted to be still because I didn't want to, I have to get this. Oh, there's a check mark because I flinched on it.
Yeah.
So they did that. They did the same thing for the second Ironman. I finished 2. They got it. So I got 2 Ironman.
Do they have any aspirations of doing an Ironman with you?
No. Now my granddaughter, I have hopes for. She may be a swimmer. She likes that, but
okay.
no.
Would you do another one?
My goal was to outlive everybody in my age group. If unfortunately I had to replace my knee about 7 months ago, so those things are out. But I it's still in me. I still really like I'll volunteer when I get a chance to go help others out. I would love to do it, but I don't want to be doing a knee replacement again because that hurt worse than anything that I've had trying to recover from that.
Yeah, my mom just got one done last week. Mm-hmm. They redid it because the cement wasn't done the first time.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, Doug, it's been great having you on.
Thanks for having me.
I think the question that you asked yourself, like I told you, my buddy Zan, was the one that got me to sign up for my first marathon, and after a couple beers at a sushi place, right? Beer Ranger.
You didn't have enough food to soak up the beer, so it was like you were really bad.
We signed up. He's like, if you're gonna do it, let's do it right now, And anyways, the brutality along the way, the conversations that you're having with yourself. I remember we're at the 8th mile, and you got a lot more to go still.
Yeah.
And we were at the halfway spot. It was right around there. And this little kid's outside. He was trying to encourage us. He was on his grass, and he was like, you're halfway there. And he meant it in
On the
an
one hand, it's a
encouraging.
good thing. On the other hand,
Yeah.
I'm
I'm like,
there.
oh, that broke me mentally. I'm like, I can barely move now, and I'm only halfway there.
Oh,
and
man.
at like mile like 19 or 20, we were coming up this hill. It's like the worst place to put a hill was like at mile 12 to like mile 19. We're coming up this hill, and I see these people, with their friends and their family, and they were the ones that were like kind of keeping pace with us. And I'm like, man, they quit, and they were just like hanging there. And I'm like, you guys are just done? And he was like, yeah, that was a lot for us. And I was like, you were so close.
Yeah.
You're so close to finishing. But that question that you ask yourself, that's a question that I've asked myself in like so many years over the last 2 decades of doing business. Can you live with yourself if you quit?
Right.
And it's great that you said, no, I can't, so I'm going to finish this.
Yeah. And it's nice to meet somebody else that has that same sort of mindset. I can't quit.
Yeah. Well, great to have you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah. Guys, hope you got some value, some great stories, some books. Book out there, Rattled Awake.
Rattled Awake.
And then there's going to be some more coming. And look forward to seeing your next book when that comes out.
And I will give you credit in that chapter. So I maybe kind of, hey, look, is this sort of what you're thinking? I'll give you a little preview of that. We'll see.
And, man, great value. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Guys, we'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.